A very good evening to all of you, and we are set for another exciting session of Project 100 Storytellers. So we have some people still joining in. So yeah, before we begin, I would like to mention our partners of our event, our gold partner, Chartered Institute of Marketing, our media and awards partner, Arteculate Asia, and our platforms partner, Curva. And today we have a very interesting session lineup for you. And it will also be a session delivered by one of our partners as well. He is an entrepreneur who has a decade-long journey in the digital media and publishing industry, and he has been a startup mentor and lecturer for various courses and institutions. Please welcome our speaker for today, the founder of Arteculate Asia, Mr. Enosh Praveen. It's over to you.
Hi. Thanks, Divanka. That was a lovely introduction. When you say decade long, it already makes me feel like I'm too old. But anyways, guys, I would like you all to keep this as a very casual and feel free to drop in your questions anytime. So just to greet you all in the same way of your style. Hey, Isaac, how are you? Feel free to... Oh, nice. There's audio also. Feel free to talk. Feel free to chat. Let's keep it as an interactive sessions because I would like to give as much as possible of the little experience that I have. So let's get started. I think, Divanka, you're good. Welcome everyone again. So what we are doing today is, I think the topic is mostly about digital media and startups. But I think being in the industry, one of the biggest challenges that we see is that for most of the founders and startups, that one of the major things that they always find it difficult is how do they take their stories out, how to get into the media, how to get into the papers, where to start. All of these are the biggest questions that they have. So what I want to do was, since you all are having a lot of sessions during this 3 weeks, what I wanted to do was probably give you a little bit more insight into the media aspect itself, because I think in terms of how to utilize digital media and most of the other technicalities, I think some of the other resource people will also give you a better idea on. So what we're going to talk today is going to be purely about how to get digital media coverage and mileage for startups. Just to get a quick understanding, for the people who are here, what are the areas that y'all are planning to get into? Are y'all having startups right now? Are y'all looking to get into the media industry? Are y'all storytellers, videographers, photographers? What are you guys right now? Can I quickly stop sharing for a second? Let me check this. Aspiring YouTuber, nice. Okay, that's Shehan. Guys, answer. I just want truckload of answers. Are you all or your interest? What are you interested in? Is it writing, storytelling, media? I mean, why are you in this workshop in the first place? What brought you here? Nice. Amri, Nimatu, Pravisha. Oh, freelancer. Okay, nice. Writing, engineering, market, and data analyst. Okay, nice. That's interesting. Freelancing, content writing. Yes, nice. Event planning. Interesting. Okay, I think we are getting quite a few. Graphic designing, lovely. IT marketing, content writing. Okay, that's great. Okay, I think that's amazing. So I think we have a great audience here, because I just wanted to get a feel of what you guys are doing. B2B marketing. Okay, I think we could probably delve deeper into that. Graphic designing, digital creations. Perfect. Okay, so quickly jumping back into my presentation. The outline of what we are going to discuss today is, with all of what you just told now, I think the fundamental is going to be just a few things. You just can put it out into an outline and then figure out how all of what you just told is going to make sense. And if you just put this outline right now, it's going to be what exactly are the building blocks of a great story. I think even when it comes to graphic designing, when it comes to storytelling, content writing, one person said B2B marketing. Okay, how does all of this fit into place? Event planning, how does all of this come into play? Is it's just a basic few building blocks. And if we understand that right, we would get a better understanding of how best are we going to use this to arrive at a final outcome. So just to run through the outline, it's one is, the building blocks of a great story, which we will be discussing. We'll be diving deeper into that. I will also share a little bit of some of the stories that we have done at Arteculate. Then once you do stories, what do you do with it? So we will talk about, okay, how do you get wider reach, and then how to keep, consistent at it. And there is a new space which is kind of getting more popular in Sri Lanka, which is pretty popular in the Western world, is thought leadership. How do you dive into more of thought leadership? When you're looking at startups, this is one of the main areas that you can really capitalize on. And then contacting media organizations. So again, whatever role you are in, whatever organization you are in, whatever startup you're in, I think you need to also have better relations with the media. And then I will give you a little bit of tips of how you can actually reach out to local media. Let me stop this again quickly. I would like to know, some of you guys, can you share what are your favorite books? What are you guys reading right now? Okay. In it, okay. Oh yeah, that's a good one. Rich Dad Poor Dad. So yeah, that's a good one. So I'll tell you one of the biggest problems, right? When it comes to most of the people that when we work with in terms of content writing or storytelling, I think one of the main things that people struggle with. So before even diving into all this hardcore tactics of how to do digital media for startups, let's come down to the basics first. I think lots of people struggle when it comes to just creating very simple captions to put it on social media. That's one of their biggest challenges. When you give like an article and let's say come up with a nice caption which makes people want to go and click something, that is an art itself. That in itself is a creative process of how do you write a caption, how do you get people coming into getting a lot of traffic into your content. So in terms of that, let's say writing, it's not only about how good you're writing, but it also involves a lot of marketing knowledge, a little bit of how do you handle a little bit of psychology maybe, how do you read people. And one of the things that I would like to show you as real examples. The reason why I even gave this ask you what are the books you are reading. Number one, very simple. If you need to be a great cook, you need to also kind of be a foodie. You need to be able to taste food and know which is good and bad. So a great cook, they usually say never trust a thin cook because then he hasn't eaten enough. So always trust a cook who is like probably fat. I'm just kidding here. But if you need to become better at something, you need to also expose yourself into those types of things. For example, if you need to get better at writing, I think you need to read a lot of books, read a lot of websites, articles, whatever. Just do as much as possible where you can get exposed to what the art you're trying to create. Now, coming to a good example, I think a lot of people struggle to even create simple captions. Now, the best place I would say to go is all those books that you just put down on the chat. If you actually go to amazon.com right now, you would see it is beautifully summarized. It's beautifully summarized, so that entire book is beautifully summarized, and you usually see it on the back of the page, on the back of the book. And that's sometimes the most creative marketing message ever. And usually I think even when we give out an article, let's say there is an article that we created and we need to put it out, one of the things that people struggle with is, okay, how do I put the caption first? So I have one of my colleagues here who would like to put a few articles of what we do at Arteculate. I want to do it as a small exercise. So we will share about 2 or 3 links. What I want you to do is immediately come up with, you have to do 2 things here. You need to immediately go through the article, take about 30 seconds, go through the article, maybe just the first or second paragraphs, and come up with a caption. We can do that right now. Can we start that? I don't get that. What's that? Yours hard time gone. Lucky champ, this opportunity for you. Okay, what's that? Was there a caption? Okay, tired of the recruitment process, Rooster might have a great burn. Nice. Nimutu, that's nice. So Bavad the Rani. Hope I got your name right. Was there a caption that you sent?
This is
Naveen,
for
yes, go ahead.
this is for person who are seeking job for the opportunity. So your hard time also already gone. This is the time for the opportunities. Please.
Okay, all right. Okay, I got that. Okay. So Navindu says, how was Sri Lanka startup raised 1 billion LKR valuation? Okay, good. For the rooster story, yes. Okay, I think y'all can, okay, we just got one more. Rooster, place where job seekers and HR specialists meet. Okay, that's good. So OC, who in OC, please keep note of this, all the people who are sending. Oh, somebody has said all three together. What's that? Shehan, we reinvented how you search for jobs. Here's how. The restaurant industry Mako and what it could mean to you. Asiata Labs, new relationship and how it will change the tech world. Okay, that's wow, that's record speed there. Amazing. Netme, Chetana, Prabisha, Rooster.org says, well, let's have a great idea for recruitment. Okay, that's perfect. I love this already. Perfect. So jumping back into my session again, there's a presentation. So I'll get back to, I think we got some amazing answers. If you're really, really struggling, right, even for captions, I think, one of the best examples is, if you take wine bottles, I just have a whiskey bottle right here, okay? Something you can't even describe, right? I probably got fascinated by what's written here. This is like a limited edition, like Game of Thrones whiskey that was put out, so it was limited edition. And I was like amazed, even the wine bottles and whiskey bottles, what they actually write behind, because sometimes taste is undescribable. It's sometimes hard. So because even articles you can read and just summarize it. Books, yeah, it's big, but you can summarize it. But then how do you explain something which is kind of you can't put it into words? So I think maybe if you want to get inspiration, maybe look up some wine bottles, maybe whiskey bottles. These are like amazing creative writing that you can ever get. And that's a great place to start also. So just a little bit about myself before diving into some of the theories. Right now, I'm the founder of Arteculate Asia and guest writer at Ceylon Today Tech Talk newspaper, former director of there's this organization called Founder Institute, which trains founders to start their startups, ambassador at GACA, Sri Lanka. There's a startup meetup called Spike Lanka, so I'm a co-host there. And then there is another meetup called FR Friday, so I'm a co-host there as well. I think if you want to connect with me, I can share my LinkedIn link with you as well. Probably my colleague can do that for you. So to dive into what we actually look at. So in the outline, when we look at storytelling, first of all, we need to even have a story before even coming to captions and everything. So I will come back to that. But before even come to captions, I think when we are looking at stories itself, we need to look at how are we going to come up with a story? That is like, question number one. How are we even going to come up with a story? So there is a very easy way of doing this. There is like a 6-step process. And first of all, you need to formulate. What do you mean by formulate is you need to first have an idea of what are you going to talk about. That is, you have to formulate. The second is amplify. Now, once you have an idea of what you're going to talk about, you need to amplify that slightly in a way that it sounds nice for someone else to read or listen to. We will dive a little bit deeper into that. Then comes, what is the message? What are you actually going to put into that story? Then comes, okay, now you have a great story. How do you go out into the market? How do you reach your audience? Then comes unrelenting consistency and reach. So how do you do that in a consistent manner? And finally, it needs to have your strategy. So if we actually dive into each one of these, I think it'll if you actually go back, you can even remember all of this because it all falls into a nice little word called famous, FAMOUS. Maybe in the chat you can quickly put, what famous stands for, and we will keep a note of, who's replying the correct answers. Yes, I'm just giving you the answers now. Formulate, amplify, messaging, outreach, unrelenting, strategy. Now let's dive into each of these a little bit more. Now, when you say formulate, first of all, you need to come up with what the story is about. So let's say you are in a startup, or you are working for another startup, or let's say you're a content creator of whatever form, even if it's video or audio, whatever. First of all is the story. How do you formulate it? Let's say you have something like you need to build up an office in, let's say, in Jaffna. If you just say, you're going to build an office in Jaffna, that's kind of, it sounds boring. So what you need to do is, okay, what exactly is the message here? You need to figure out, okay, how are you going to formulate this? So you need to figure out, okay, are you like, launching in the north, or are you kind of, what exactly is the message? You need to kind of put it into a nice wording. So usually we can categorize all of this into 3 or 4 easy categories, because pretty much most of the stories fall into about 4 buckets. So I think identifying those buckets is important at the first time, important at first. So usually stories either fall into product or services launches, or it can be into, say, mergers, acquisitions, partnerships, or funding when it comes to startups. Or another favorite thing usually that revolves around startups is milestones, achievements, recognition, and awards. I think if you take the newspaper, most of the time this is what you see. And then thought leadership. So once you formulate, you then go into amplify. So formulate is something like, okay, you first figure out what you want to talk about, and then amplify is how do you make it much more interesting, where the people are going to be more curious to know about. So one of the articles that we actually went out with the beginning of last year is actually beginning of this year, it went on the newspapers. So we have this meeting called Spike Lanka, which happens on a monthly basis. But entire 2020, we had to stop it because Spike usually happens physically and it happens at barefoot. But during Corona, we couldn't have it. During the lockdown, actually, we couldn't have it. And then 2021 January, we finally decided, okay, everything is open. Let's go have a physical meetup again. So we kind of wanted to make it like a big scene, and we wanted to attract a lot of people to come for the meetup. So rather than putting out an article or digital campaign saying Spike January is happening, we went out with a bigger message. We said the longest startup meetup is back after lockdowns. And in a way that is also a fact, where Spike has been the longest running startup meetup in Sri Lanka. So we kind of capitalized on an existing truth, a fact, and we kind of made it a bit more hyped up, saying, okay, we are back after lockdowns. We didn't just put a title saying Spike is back, Spike is happening in January. We kind of amplified that title. So that's what we mean by amplify. So how will your company, some of the things that you can answer if you have something that you want to talk about, maybe a few questions that you can answer to come up with something to amplify is, okay, how will your company change the world? It's not like, you don't have to think about how your company is changing the world, but it's more of that vision. If you think about something, okay, are you going to improve, reduce waste of plastic, or are you going to increase, education in the rural areas? Those kind of, how are you able to change the world? Those ideologies, if you can come up with within your story, those things will amplify your message. And that's what you need to kind of, bring it into a story before starting your message. Then comes, these are a few examples of amplifying. So all of these were like some of the stories that we ran on Arteculate. So I think the first one right here is like, Chamira from Arimac. So they actually set up something in Singapore. And, we didn't want to say like, there is this Sri Lankan company setting up office in Singapore. But what we did was, how is Arimac expanding its digital empire across the APAC region? Does that sound better? I mean, you can share it in your comments, like, if amplification makes sense for stories, or do you think, just saying, we are launching in Singapore makes much more sense? There is validations for that as well. I think sometimes straightforward message also works, but when we are putting out a message, what we need is it needs to reach a large audience. People usually don't give attention to very ordinary stuff. Most of the people give attention only for extraordinary stuff. And when you use extraordinary titles like this, which is not lying, you still stick to the truth, you still stick to the facts, but you kind of make your titles amplified. Another example is Ananke IoT here, which they were going into the tea industry. Few more examples. This was HealthNet. They actually launched the world's first pharma assistant. So all of this is true. It's actually the world's first pharma assistant. Then Roda, it's like an electric bike, which also launched, I think, last year. Messaging, the FAM. And this is probably another important part. Once you tackle your title and once you figure out, okay, how are you going to promote it, amplify it, then comes the messaging. How exactly are you going to structure it? So why I even told you to look at the first paragraph is because most of the stories that are written, especially in Articulate as well as in any paper that you take, newsprint paper, the message structure is like an inverted pyramid. The reason is pretty much the entire news is summarized and put in the first paragraph. You would answer questions like, who, what, when, where, and why on that first paragraph itself. The reason being, we want to make sure that, anybody who has 30 seconds time or 3 minutes time, whoever comes into your article or anything, even a video or whatever that you're creating, time is more precious. So we need to make sure, okay, at the shortest possible time, how can you get the message crossed to whoever the audience is? So usually in written formats, or mostly even in video formats, we follow something called the inverted pyramid, where we put the entire gist of the story at the start. If it's a video, we try to come up with, okay, what this entire video is about, we try to put it within the first 30 seconds. If it's about an article, within the first paragraph, we try to put everything out there. Then we build on top of that for the conclusion. So which means it'll be the lead, then it'll be the body that will like dive into a little bit more details of what this thing is about, and then you can end it with a conclusion. So that's how usually messages are created. But there are other ways of doing messaging as well, which probably I think you can Google and find out. One of the other popular ways of utilizing digital media is called an accordion structure. Now, in an accordion structure, what you do is where you can divide the messages into multiple small digestible formats and put it under subheadings. And if you can expand them, click expand and then consume them. That is another structure, which is also very effective depending on what digital format you're utilizing. Now, let's say you have your idea of the story, you have your title of the story, now you have created your message of what you want to take out to your audience. Next is going to be, how do you take it out, how do you make it consistent, and how do you form strategy for long term. So I think one of the ways of doing that is, especially if you're utilizing PR, either digital PR or print PR, there are two ways of doing it. One is called exclusive PR and embargoes. So there are two different formats. Exclusive is more like, you reach out to individual media organizations and you say that you have an exclusive story, can they run the story? So you need to pitch it to them, and based on the value of the story, they would publish it. Most of the time, startups who doesn't want to spend a lot of money, who doesn't want to hire like digital media agencies, this is a good way of getting their stories out. Embargoes is usually, you have a campaign done, you have like a one particular article written, you then send it out to multiple media organizations, and you agree with them saying on a particular date, they will publish it. So it's more like, an understanding. You get into an agreement with all the media organizations that on a particular date at a particular time, these articles will come out, articles or videos or whatever. So usually if you see most of the tech companies, tech products, this is what they do. Like, about, see the Apple phone or the Android phone. The moment it launches, suddenly you see, it's all over the internet at the same time. It's not that, everybody had time to sit and write reviews and do videos and all of that within 2 minutes. They already started doing that maybe about 1 or 2 weeks ahead. And because they had access to it, they had access to information, they had access to the products, they had access to maybe the companies itself. So they do all of their material and they have it ready. And on that given day and time, they put it out. So what happens is the end result is, it looks big. It's like a big event on internet itself. Like, suddenly out of the blues, when you go into internet, you see, the same product, like, the same model of the phone, you see it on YouTube, you see it on papers, you see it on print, online, all the websites. It's like, all over the place. So it kind of, you can't miss it. So those are the two ways of, using exclusive and embargo. Further coverage is, let's say, if you are a startup or you are working for a startup, if you need to get your content as viral as possible, what you need to do is you just don't rely only on your publications, only on your digital platforms and social media platforms. It's better to kind of collaborate with multiple platforms to get this message out. The other one is coordinate with digital publications or PR agency. That is, if there is, let's say, a serious effort in taking a particular story out, and then there is also marketing budgets to be spent on it, then you could reach out to, let's say, PR agencies or maybe even digital publications, just like ourselves, who are also doing digital publications. And one of the main things when it comes to sharing a story, most of the time, most of the startups, most of the people who are in digital media, they think it as like, you just put it out one story and they expect miracles to happen. It usually doesn't happen like that. What needs to be done is you need to strategize a story for at least a month. Better is if it's 3 months to 6 months. And you keep that story extended to such a long time where you keep talking about, keep putting more material, keep putting socials, it's not the same material. You can create lots of supporting material as well and keep that message extended. Because that's when you kind of, like a funnel, you capture all the audience which comes into your, preferred platforms to get to know about the entire message. Are we good so far? Any questions? I'm stopping the screen share for now just to see chat. Any questions, guys? We can then move on. Oh, nice, good stuff. There is more captions, nice. Okay, just continuing anyway. I'll give you an idea of how we can utilize thought leadership. This is something that, most of the people who are doing digital media doesn't even care about or don't know about how to utilize. So thought leadership is something where if you can maybe utilize a particular subject area and make yourself known in that particular subject area. If you look at, I think most of you guys would have some sort of interest in one particular subject. If you either go and search the hashtags for it in Sri Lanka, or if you search the keywords on Google, sometimes, or pretty much most of the times, what you see is there is no one particular thought leader on any of this. There are like some very, mainstream keywords, which, corporates make use of. But I think, when it comes to Sri Lanka, I think that it's still open. So if you want to be heard in a, say, in cybersecurity, or if you want to be heard as, the top digital media video creator or whatever, you can pick your niche in terms of what are your subject areas, and pick your keywords and maybe hashtags, and you can start creating more and more content under that. And thought leadership is, in a way, it's kind of, you can't define it, but let's say thought leadership can happen in many different levels, where it can be your own social media, your personal social media, digital media, your corporate, your startup, all of that. You can start creating long-term content and consistent content, where you can start becoming more and more authoritative on a particular subject area. And what happens with that is, over time, people will start recognizing you for that. And the moment that subject area comes up, there is no other else who comes to mind. Immediately it will be like, hey, these guys are the go-to people for that. And I think there are a few people who even utilize this thought leadership as a powerful tool, even on some of our platforms. So these are some of our contributor writers who are standing for a certain area. So if you look at, I think one of the first article is they are kind of more into the fintech area, and they're trying to create more content based on that, and be identified more into that. There is another contributor writer, more talking about tech marketing. So if you go, wherever on her social media or digital media, wherever you see, I think she stands for tech marketing in Sri Lanka, which is, kind of a niche because nobody else is doing that. And if you look at, another contributor writer here who talks only about cybersecurity, mostly controversial, but, cybersecurity, about cybersecurity stuff. There is another contributor writer who talks about co-working, how that affects the economy. So I think the idea here is, are you standing for any thought leadership, or is there any area that you can fine tune to start, talking about and be known for that? The thing is, you can be good at, multiple subjects. That's not the point here. It's not that you have to be, known for all of that. You just need to have, like, one key topic that people just identify you for, because that will give you more and more visibility. It's okay for you to have, like, you can be, jack of all trades, knowing too many things. That's okay. But there's something that, you can start creating conscious content, so that people will identify you for that. And that in itself will give you much more leverage than anybody out there. So this is like a small tip. I think if you want, you can just take a quick screenshot of this. A simple way of how we can reach out to the media. I think if you have stories, reaching out to the media is pretty much simple. You just, greet the journalists or editors, and you put out, like, what's the message, what you want published, and why it matters to them. And most of the time, I think they will either reply you, or they would want a bit more details of, how they can assist you with in publishing the story. And I think this is pretty much like the most organic and cost-effective way of how you can get your startup more publicized. And I think that's something, which is completely not used from a Sri Lankan perspective. So yeah, that brings to the end of what I am sharing today. But the thing is, I think there is so much more that we can dive into, but in the interest of time, I think I've kept it, on a very surface level. But right now, what I want to do is, I want to answer your questions. So now is the time y'all ask questions, and then we can start answering them. How was it in terms of the famous strategy? What are the areas that you all think that you all usually need more help on? Or first of all, like, what are the, like, have you all had experience in creating stories for companies or your own startups? Or are you guys, like, still starting and still learning? Are we open for audio as well, Tivanka?
Yeah, of course. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So guys, open for audio as well.
Yes, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your questions.
Okay, we have a question. Is it okay if the headline kind of takes a jab at the reader so we grab their attention? Okay, so I think this was also, this is like, it's a very common question also. If you're trying to mislead, then don't do it. If it is, something related to what you're actually talking about, then yes. But then again, as much as possible, try to stay away from clickbait, because what happens is it's hard to build credibility online. It's hard to build, it's easy to break. So make sure that you're always thinking about the long term. If your only goal is to kind of get traffic for just one particular article and that's all, you don't have any long-term goal, then yeah, go ahead for it. I probably don't see anything wrong with that, as long as you fulfill your objective. But in a nutshell, I would say probably don't do that, because that will hurt your reputation, credibility in the long run. So probably don't do that. We have another question that is how to get to know the main keywords and hashtag suits for our content. So okay, that is also pretty easy. I think to immediately identify the keywords, I think you can look at what the story you're even talking about and what's the main subject area of the story that you're talking about. So pretty much any story there is what's the ultimate, if you boil it down, what exactly the ultimate thing that you're talking about in terms of, okay, is it falling into a particular industry, is it falling into a particular type of technology or invention, or is it about you need to narrow those things down. Out of that, I think you can do quick searches, maybe on social media, maybe on Google. You can search to see what are the trending keywords. Even on, I think even on LinkedIn, when you even type in some of the hashtags, it will show you what are on top. And most often than not, some of the recommendations that LinkedIn throws out, feel free to use it, because they are also suggesting, okay, going through a caption, they're suggesting what are the best keywords. Even on Instagram, I think when you put down hashtags, I think I have seen a lot of people just put like tons and tons of hashtags. I probably don't think that's a good idea. Always try to relate it to what exactly the content is and use what is used popularly, which is on Instagram. I think it shows you like in every keyword, every hashtag that you choose, it shows it's used like 2 million times or 5 million times, and some will show you like it's used only like 500 times. So maybe don't go for those low keywords, or if you not keywords like hashtags. Keywords, I think it's easy to narrow down, do some Google search, find what's trending, and then use it according to that. We have another question that's from Shaik, I think. Could you give us some advice on the ethical aspects of using content? I probably don't get that. In terms of ethical aspect of using what content? If you can let me know, Shaik, a bit more on that. Shehan is asking, do embargoes come with restrictions on a review? So embargoes, restrictions on a review. Shehan, again, if you can just give me a bit more idea into that. But just to give an idea, embargoes is more like if you have a story, you send it out to a publication. First, you need to say that, hey, this is an exclusive story. This is not published yet. Do you agree that we can publish this on Wednesday at 2 o'clock? They would reply you back saying, yes, we agree, we can go ahead with this. Or they might say, no, we are not interested. So that is usually the agreement there. They usually don't, probably I think they even agree only after going through the content. If they agree with the content, they say, okay, let's go ahead with the embargo. So that's usually how it happens. So there is no restrictions per se. It's just a matter of, okay, are the people that you're reaching out to, are they agreeing or not? And then eventually maybe you send out to 10 people, maybe about 5 to 6 people will agree. And then now you're sure that, okay, on that particular day and time, that news will go out. In terms of, can they customize a little bit more? Yes, I think that depends on, what are the instructions that you're giving them. So if you say, here's the outline, but you can kind of customize it a little bit, I think those things can be based on your creativity. So we have a question from Netme. When you start writing how to build up a well-defined scope, it's like scope in terms of content, is it? I mean, if you I think the best way to start is, I mean, if I put it very simple, you need to start writing in terms of what are the subject areas that you're good at. If not, you need to do a lot of research on what are the areas that you're going to write about. So there are maybe few ways of looking at this. If you are mostly like, a personal blog writer, what you can do is, it's more of, your internalized, your internal voice, speaking out, and it's mostly an area that you already know. Let's say you're slowly going into like, startup and corporate writing. Then what you need to do is you need to be well versed in the subject. So you need to start reading a lot, researching a lot to start writing. So the thing is, the last thing that you want to do is write on something which you don't know about. That's when you're always, tempted to start copy pasting and plagiarizing, which at the end of the day is not going to serve any purpose also. So I think if you're going to define a scope, start very small. First, think about what are the areas that you want to get into. Is it meaningful? Does it help you in the long run? And then start getting into it. This, I think, if you're like as a purely as a content writer, if you're looking at, yes, I think you need to define your scope first. But if you're coming from an existing startup point of view, or if it's like, you're writing for a corporate, I think the scope pretty much will be defined already. You just need to figure that out and then write within that scope. Pranavi is asking, what are the main mistakes happen in digital media and how to overcome these? Okay, there is quite a lot that can happen in terms of digital media is also vast. But let's say if it's in terms of content, I think there can be technical errors in content. But usually good thing about digital is, most of the time you have access to quickly go and change it. If it's like a caption or an article, you have access to change it. If it's a video, sometimes, bad luck, you have to take it down and do re-edits and upload. Maybe it's like a bit more hard work. If it's digital media and if you're talking about spending and stuff, maybe you can run some campaigns which like, is completely inefficient and you're like spending loads and loads. So those things also can be mistakes. Or you put something which, is not inclusive and, you're kind of making other people get offended. I think in one of your sessions, I think one of the ads that was shared was what Melbourne, the advertisement about the fair and the dark sister. Now that, imagine if it's only put on TV, I don't think anybody could have raised a concern. Only because it was put on social media, everybody had something to say about it, and that became such a big issue. So social media is more like a two-way channel. So if you're putting something, you need to be open that you are going to get criticism, but on top of that, you need to also make sure how to even avoid it in the first place. You definitely know that people are going to share feedback. So why not look at all of these aspects, whether it's inclusive, whether it's, not racially impartial, racial, religious, all of that, not impartial in any way. And, you need to make your messaging very clear and straightforward. So that's how you could do that. So there's Danula who's asking, what are the main points we should focus when we are dealing with media, when we can market a startup? So the thing is, it's like, what's the ultimate message? So if it's a startup, what do you want? If you work, most of the time, even when we work with startups or when we work with corporates as Arteculate, when we are working, most of the times when we are trying to write the story for them, most of these people, they just keep talking about features and, all the awards that they won and, all about product features and what the product can do and all of that. I think it's much better in looking at what the audience want to read, in terms of how can audience benefit out of the content that they're reading. So the more it's audience centered, it's much better. And the other thing is, keep it clear. Don't try to pack too many things into one messaging. Keep it very short and digestible. That works pretty better. And I think even in terms of social media platforms which are getting popular, I think you can realize that earlier certain forms of social media which had long type of content, long form where you need to spend a lot of energy or other time, were more popular. But as time goes on, things like Instagram is becoming popular, and TikTok right now is becoming popular. The main thing is, okay, it's just the content is getting shorter and shorter and shorter, and that talks a lot about your audience attention span. So we have a question that is, what is your opinion about marketing by the inclusion of trendy words in captions? Why not just go ahead, use trendy words, but be careful. Don't put trendy words where it will confuse your reader. It needs to be trendy where it's easy to understand. Simple way to look at that is, if you can write a caption and even if your grandma can read and understand, perfect. If you write something, you're putting all these trendy words, nobody else knows, people can't read it, nobody understands, no point putting that. So don't do that. There is Roshan who's asking, how do we reach the perfect matching audience of our content on social media? Hey, social media gives you all the access. So if you want to, I think that's the beauty of social media. So if you want to put out something, easiest way is you first cater the content to your audience, and then you can easily run promotions targeting those people. If you ask me about organic reach and interactions, pretty much that's non-existent anymore, because I think maybe a few years, 5 or 10 years back, organic made sense. Right now, organic doesn't mean anything, pretty much, at least on Facebook, because I think these corporates are getting bigger and bigger, and only if you promote, you can get it to your audience. But that is a short-term strategy. The long-term strategy is, obviously, you create consistent content for that audience again and again and again, because then your audience also will get to know that if they come to this place, what type of content they are getting. So that is something that you need to be very mindful about. We have Isuru asking, can you give us some suggestions for creating video content that sends a quick message in 30 seconds or less? That's so it's like this. People think that doing long form of content is usually the hardest, but actually the other way is more hard. The more and more you try to shorten it, the more and more you try to make it like as short as possible, that's the most hardest, and that requires a lot of creative ability. That requires a lot of creative mindset of how do you do that, because it's not just, let's say if you need to communicate a message within 30 seconds, it's not just about just randomly clipping something and putting for 30 seconds. That doesn't work. I think the best example you could get is, I think Isuru, is look at TV commercials. Most of them are under 30 seconds, either 30-second blocks or 60-second blocks. I mean, start looking at advertisements. I'm talking about TV commercials, video commercials. I know it's like, it's a deteriorating industry, but if you maybe go and YouTube some of the YouTube commercials, you see how within 30 seconds they're able to, with the right message, with the right audio, visuals, they're able to talk about a message, and that will give you a better idea. We have Minula. Is it okay to use a poetic language when writing rather than using a technical style focusing more on data? Again, it depends on your audience. If you're talking to a technical type of audience, they would probably want to see more data. If you're more trying to reach to an audience which likes poetic language, then yes, feel free to use it. Again, it depends on the content as well. So let's say you can't have like, a very hardcore report with, all these finances and stuff. You can't go and put a poetic language. Sometimes opposites also work. It can be like a very creative process. But usually what I'm saying is, it depends on what the content that you're trying to promote as well. So you probably can't do like financial report in poetic language. I don't know whether it'll work. If you can do it, good. Um, and vice versa. But there is no rules for this. You can definitely try your creativity. And then based on that, you need to fine tune your writing as well. Shike, in the sense, people tend to use content the way they want in small business. Do you think we should have some barriers in stories? I kind of forgot the first question though. Let me get that. Shike, can you get on audio? Shike Dawood? If you can get on audio, I think that'll be better. I'm just going to Shehan's one. Yeah, is that you, Shike?
Yeah. I just want to know that maybe sometimes I've seen that people use content to the way they want, like they don't have any barriers set for them. I just want to know if we should set our own barriers when we use content, because there's no like any law or let's say something set by the government for the content we should use, right? Should we set barriers for us?
Yeah. So what I'm trying to understand is, what do you mean by content barriers? What type of, you're talking about
the language we use, the target audience we try to target, things like that, I mean.
So language we use, as long as you don't use profanity, I think that's not a problem. But I don't think there is too much of barriers per se. I mean, in terms of, let's say, news, and if you're talking about certain, let's say, news aspect stuff, definitely I think your obvious barriers are, don't go into fake news, don't publish anything without your right sources. Always, you are accountable for what you're writing. Not only what you're writing, even as an organization, what you put out in your own social medias, you are accountable for that. So those are basics of journalism which need to be looked into anyway. So I think those things, even if it's not as a rule, if it's even not in a rule book anyway, I think these are basic journalistic ethics that we need to follow. Probably Sri Lanka is a country where nobody, there is no like a specific rule book that you can go to figure out all of this. And probably there are many media organizations out there who are not even following some of these basic ethics. Doesn't mean that it's like none of us can follow that. I think the best thing to do is, if we figure out the basic ethics in journalism, we just need to follow that just for the good of humanity, rather than producing stuff which is either fake or attacking someone, or it's like random conspiracy theories, or even language, what you mentioned, like if you can stick to good language, then that's not too hard. So yeah, I hope I answered that question, Shai.
Yeah, cool, thanks.
So Shehan, like, there's a manufacturer of a product or service. Shehan, I think if you just get on audio, that's even better. Shehan, if you're there, please get on audio. I'll just quickly run to Netmi's one. Yeah, Shehan, you're there?
So this is in reference to my previous question.
Yeah.
The one about the embargoes. So I've seen some reviewers or writers mention that they are not allowed to like mention about a specific specification of a product. So
you mean like reviews?
Yeah.
As in, let's say tech products like phones and stuff?
Tech products, computers, especially cars.
Okay. So I think, if there is an agreement between whoever is giving you the news and there is an agreement, then I think we need to stick to that agreement. So it's no point, getting into an agreement with someone and then you're going out just because you have insight into a product launch or what the product is about. It comes back to ethics. It's not ethical to kind of go out and publish them just because you had access to it, because somebody else reached out to you only because they had some sort of understanding that you wouldn't take the news out. They're just only reaching out to get your agreement. And usually I think these agreements also happen in a way they don't share the news first. They first reach out saying, hey, we have something like this. There is this, let's say it's a phone or a car. They will say, on next week on this day, we are planning to do an embargo on a particular product or service that we have. would you like to agree so that we can send you additional materials? That's how usually it happens. So if you don't agree, you don't even get the material in the first place. Usually that's how it happens. But just to answer your question, Shehan, I think once you agree and they send you the material, and then now you want to kind of, go beyond that and, not honor their agreement, then it's kind of unethical in one point. If you feel like there is not enough information, that they don't want to talk about certain features, and the news is not standing on its own for us to publish, maybe you can again get in touch with the publication and justify and say that why you're not carrying it. I think it's better to communicate internally before doing anything out of the ordinary. So hope that answered Shahan. So let me say thank you. Navidu says, what tools do you use to optimize SEO of your content? This, I think I'm the least qualified for this. So our team does all of this. Probably, I think one of our guys is, I think, logged in. If you can maybe get on audio, you can explain that a bit.
Hey, quick check. Am I audible here?
Yeah, you're audible.
Yeah, guys. So regarding SEO, so there's plenty of tools that you can use out there. If you're using WordPress and so on, there are plenty of plugins like Yoast, which we rely on. But generally, the basic SEO step is what Google looks at is a keyword. Like, for example, if you are talking about cars, then Google will say, okay, you should use cars for a certain percentage of your text in your total text. So it's like 10 to 12% typically. So if you're writing about 600 to 1,000 words, you're looking about 10 to 12 times you have to mention the word cars, so that if anybody's typing about cars, your content is found. But there are a lot of other intricate details as well, and there are plugins out there that can help you. So hope that offers a bit more detail on that.
That was good. Thanks a lot. Hope that answered your question. I think that was Navidu. So Danula is asking, what are the most attractive from this, using a poster with big letters or just 2 sentences for an article, just a good topic, an article. So the thing is this, I think you probably can use all of that. There is no restrictions of how you want to take your message. So use all forms of and types of content. The same message, try to take it in multiple different formats as well. Because your audience are most of the time they're fragmented. Some people prefer certain type of content, some people prefer certain type of platform. So it's better to make use of those content. So it's not about copy paste and put the same thing all over the place. It's not that as well. It's slightly customize a little bit. It's the same messaging, but slightly customize a little bit, and then put it on multiple platforms. Like an article can go on your main website. It can be slightly reworded to a personalized way. It can go on your LinkedIn, your personal profiles. It could be converted into quotes and short stories. It can go on Instagram. If it's good for video, maybe go on TikTok, things like that. It's the same message. We just want the end audience to get to know about something. We can come up with multiple pieces of content for that. We have Chetan asking, is there a specific number of sentences for a good caption? Yes, I think about 2 to 3 sentences is good. If you want to, you can go for about 4 sentences, but try to keep it as short as possible. The shorter, the better. Because when people are scrolling, they have a very short time span. Usually even the caption, let's say you're putting about three sentences, 3 lines. Even the size of the sentence, I'm talking about, let's say, what can fit into that, the Facebook, that length, that we can consider it as a short sentence. Maybe 3 of that, 3 sentences or 4 sentences. And out of that, I would still say, make sure your first sentence and the first few words are very important. So don't start it with something random and make sure like your third sentence is the most important one. So don't start with like a random sentence. All 3 sentences needs to be equally powerful. Better is like even if it's not equally powerful, at least make sure that your first sentence is super solid. That's what you need to make sure for captions. How can we make sure that the content we have written is accurate or having misled information outdated? How? Okay, that is Bahi. thing is this: if you have no factual proof and if you are not sure of any content, don't publish it in the first place. I think it's basic as that. Put out something only if you are sure about and you have the source, or you're referring to something or someone, any publications. Or if you are not sure, don't put out anything. I think that's pretty much the basics of when it comes to like journalistic ethics. If you're not sure, I would say don't put it out, because you probably might, misleading the people who are reading. So, Hansini, what are the essential components of good web content? Wow, that's a big. I mean, we can discuss about this, but essential components in the sense, I think if you just boil down everything to the basics, you just need to figure out why you have the website in the first place. What is your ultimate goal with your website? And when people come there, how do you want them to convert? I think if you just boil down to that final messaging, you would probably figure out the rest of the things is much more easier, because most of the people start a website in the opposite way. They try to figure out all about the company history, and it's like they start on the reverse side, and that usually makes even the website content process very, very difficult. So I would say don't do that. If you have the website, first think in the first place why you're having the website in the first place, and try to keep it as simple and straightforward as possible, unless you are a huge corporate website and you need to like record every single thing that's happening. You want to put your history and every single detail, then maybe your purpose is different. Then you can put as much details as you want. But usually I think when it comes to startups perspective, it needs to have a specific end goal of why you have a website. Either you need to get people converted, or you need to get more subscriptions, or there's some sort of it. Try to figure that out. Keep your website as simple as possible, as straightforward as possible, and as easy to convert as possible. That will be the best strategy. What can we do to research and identify the target audience as a content writer? So as a content writer, if you're looking at a target audience, your target audience depends on what you're writing about. So I think some of these questions that came in also, I think what you need to figure out is, what are you going to write about is question number one. You don't have to figure out, okay, who's your target audience before even starting to write. First of all, what you need to figure out is, okay, what are you going to write? Who are you going to write it for? What is the purpose of writing? What do you need to want to achieve out of this writing? If you first figure that out, the rest is easy. You can figure out who your target audience is, who you need to reach, what are the best platforms, all of that. Just immediately, the answers are very visible. If you're just trying to, figure out what the answers are, don't even know what the question is, that's the wrong way of looking at it. So probably I think what you need to be looking at is why you're writing in the first place. Who are you writing it for? I think those are the questions you need to ask first. And I think then your target audience will be much more clearer. I think even you yourself could figure that out. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we have Danula again. What do you think about YouTube ads, Block and Oh yeah, I think that's like those guys are like Block and these guys are like doing some amazing work. And I think that's a new form of content which is like becoming very, very popular locally. And that is something that, anybody in this room, in this participation can make use of, because different forms of content becomes popular at different times. And I think long form video in like story type video is getting very popular. And I think that's also a nice way of carrying messages. It can be like a social message, or it can be like a corporate advertisement, with a very creative message. If you can get into that form of content, please get into it right now, because you can, if you're looking at it as a business opportunity, definitely you can build a better business out of it. And if you're looking at the creative angles also, I think you can exercise a lot of creativity in it. The thing is, don't jump into it just because it's, you see that, it's just, exciting, and you just want to jump in with no plan whatsoever. Because these type of things, you need to put in a lot of hard work, and you need to be in it for the long run. You don't, unless you're like, I think Pisukan overnight, he just got some like crazy amount of followers. I think building followers is also, you need to have a long-term strategy. So think about it before, you need to be in it for the long run. And definitely, yes, I think those are some amazing modes of content that you can get into. We have Danula again. Yeah. You mentioned long story content type content is getting popular locally. Is it good way to address the international audience? I think again depends on the audience. Long form content in terms of that video, what I told you, I think that is getting pretty popular locally. International audience in the sense, again, I would say who's the audience and what content are you creating? I think if you're looking purely from a, hey, let's create content and let's see if I'm getting popular, that kind of an aspect you're looking at, then it's a completely different ballgame. I think it's more into the influencer market area, and I probably am not the best person because I'm not an influencer myself. So I think the dynamics are completely different, because that's more like, okay, it's keeping an eye on the market or keeping an eye on what's trending, or it's kind of getting more external inputs to figure out what's the content to create. That's probably the opposite way of how we create content when it comes to, you have a purpose-driven content and how do we take it to the right audience. It's probably two different things, at least in my perspective. So if you're looking at, if your starting point is, okay, we have a certain type of startup, or if we have certain type of technology or invention or a story that we need to take out, we need to first figure out, okay, who's the audience, how do we target them, what are the platforms, and then create the messaging. That's the best way to go about it. Some of the questions that were asked is like, if you're looking the reverse way of, okay, how to figure out my audience, what's the best way of content creation. I think in that sense, I think it's more of you keeping an eye on the market, the audience and what's trending, and figuring out what to create that. That's probably, I think, the hardest thing. That's why, it's so hard to become an influencer. But I think some people just click it and they just become overnight celebrities. So I think that's in a way it's like intuition as well. Like some influencers, they just like kind of naturally know what works best, and they just keep at it. So yeah, if that answered your question, Danula. I think we are over with the questions. If there's anything, I would happy to answer right now. But if not, thank you so much, guys. I think I had an amazing time. Hope you learned something out of at least my experiences over the years. And definitely, I think OC, keep an eye. Let me know who are the names, and we will definitely get in touch with them. Thank you, guys. Oh, by the way, one more thing. We have a small audience growth thing that is opening up on Arteculate. So probably my colleague here can drop you the link. Whoever is interested to get on board, please feel free to fill the forms, and then we will get you on board. That's it. Thank you. Divanka.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Enosh, for that very interesting and insightful session. So I think we all had a lot to take away from that session. So yes, and also from the delegate side, Mr. Enosh, they had they needed a clarification about the 1000 startup story competition. Can you just give a small brief about it?
Yeah, so 1000 startups is more like this is more like we are taking an initiative to record the startup stories that are originating out of Sri Lanka. So I think if you look at it right now, there is no central place where you can get inspiring startup content, inspiring startup stories about founders, entrepreneurs. There is no specific place. So what we are doing is we have embarked on a project where we are bringing out 1000 different stories. Out of this, I think just to make it much more easier from the project perspective, what we are doing with the 100 storytellers, we have picked the Spiralation startup, which is in a way officially also recognized, which you can reach out to them and then pursue like a startup story out of them. Usually, I think we are looking at about 600 to 800 word narrative of the startup. How that can be done is we reach out to the founders or the team, talk about how they started, what's the early story, why are they doing this, what are they trying to achieve out of this, what's their vision and end goal, and then put that out into a story format. Is that clear, or you need any more?
Yes, I think that cleared up. Yeah, for the delegates. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
If there's any questions regarding that particular project, which I think by the end of this 100 Storytellers program, I think on that particular day we are starting it, and I think it's going for a few weeks. If you have any questions, please drop an email to hello@articulate.asia, and then our team will be happy to help you or clarify anything. Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Enosh, sorry for interrupting. Can I have one question from the OC?
Yeah, sure.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so is this competition only for those who have startups, or is it open for all? So a person can write something about a startup, or is it for the startup owners to write about themselves?
Oh yeah, I think I can take this. So it's for writers to talk about existing startups. So you don't have to be a startup owner. You have to be a writer.
All right, yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So because what we are looking at is we are considering pretty much all you participants as writers. So what you need to, so writers or videographers, so pretty much any form of storytelling. So we are not sticking to text, but text is good because it's easier. It's probably the most straightforward format. But yeah, I think it's open for other forms as well. But it's for the content creators to reach out to these startups. So you don't have to own a startup yourself. That's good, Tivanka?
Okay, yes. Once again, thank you so much, Mr. Enosh, for the wonderful session and also for all the support that you are giving throughout Project 100 Storytellers to make this event a success.
No worries, Tivanka. I mean, after you announced it, I also got to know that we are award partners. So yeah, thanks to my team. I hope I also get an award. But guys, there is a new group also that was opened recently. So that's all about startup stories. So I think I would like to invite you guys also to join that, and feel free to share your stories as well. So it's a group called Startup Stories Sri Lanka. It's a Facebook group. So I think it's on chat right now. Feel free to go there, become a member, and anything startup that you come across, feel free to share it on the group. And then now that you know how to even write captions, come up with amazing captions, write it. And what we want to do is make sure that people get to know more about startups. And then from a writer's perspective, we want more and more people to start writing and content creating. So yeah, thank you so much again, Tivanka.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So yes, as usual, we will have a group photo at the end of the session. So feel free to turn on your cameras so we can have a final picture.